Welcome in AWA Unleashed. We are the, you know it, preeminent self-proclaimed podcast dedicated to the American Wrestling Association and everything surrounding the American Wrestling Association. We thank you guys for making this a part of your Tuesday, your Wednesday, your Thursday, your Friday, whatever day you're watching or listening. I want to thank you because there are a lot of podcasts out there and we're starting to get a little busy in the holidays. Thank you guys for taking, this time out to spend it with us and reminisce about what I feel is the best territory that ever existed. I'm a little partial, but hey, ball don't lie. And if you don't believe me, you can ask Mick Karch because Mick, I'm so thrilled about this project. We've been doing it for not even a year. And I love the attention and maybe the resurgence that we've been able to give the American Wrestling Association.
It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. Not only our podcast, but carrying over to the AWA Unleashed fans page.
Mm-hmm.
The response has been great. And I think you said it perfectly. The resurgence. We want to educate people who weren't there at the time, and we want to bring back the memories to those who were there at the time. And this is a great way to do it. And I just want to say something about our top 10, our Mount Rushmore times 2.5, 3.5.
Yeah. That was my fault for saying Mount Rushmore. You're like, dude, Mount Rushmore is only 4. I'm like, but I wanted 10. I still put Mount Rushmore because I can't count.
It doesn't make any difference, Chris. It's wrestling.
It doesn't have to make
time. It's like a 50-minute, 60-minute Broadway, 10 Mount Rushmores, 4. It doesn't matter. But it was really interesting to see the response that I got after the YouTube broadcast went up with people. And people generally said, yeah, you know what? That makes sense. That's a pretty good example of the top 10. The guys that really should be recognized as the greatest personalities in AWA history. There were a few here and there, where people would say, well, what about this guy or that guy?
Sure.
But for the most part, you did a nice job, folks. I really enjoyed the episode.
Well, there was a top 10 there, but we've got a new number 1 in our hearts, and that is Polish Joe. See, you knew I was waiting to bring you in, Joe. I didn't, no interference. I gave you the link this week, and you're here. So
well, you may have been waiting, but Mick was afraid that I was going to be coming back. But Karch, you Karch.
No, listen, I was not afraid that you were going to come back. It's kind of like a returning boil or a cold sore. Somewhere along the line, it's going to heal, and you just got to wait until the next time.
So now I'm a boil or a cold sore. I guess on the bright side, I'm not a hemorrhoid. So
well, we've had a few of those.
Well, that
isn't that what Bobby Heenan called people, the hemorrhoids?
No, the humanoid. You're close. It was an oil. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we've got you talk about wanting to go back and pay homage to the AWA and maybe tell some of the stories that haven't been told, or maybe some of the individuals that have the really good stuff. I feel that today it took some time, but we've got someone that I feel is going to be, just hearing you guys talk before we got going, I'm really excited because I think this is going to be one of my favorites again in terms of stories, right? This is what this podcast is about. It's about memories. It's about stories. It's about things that we remember and how we remember them, because that's part of telling the story. And part of that as well, guys, is it's very conversational. That's the goal with this, is to be very conversational. Again, our guest coming up, I don't want to spoil it. I'm trying to just kind of build the anticipation. But I mean, I feel Joe and Mick, the first time that you guys did it, together last week, I felt it was very conversational between you two.
It's, it's to be expected. Joe and I go back a long, long time, and, we're just two guys, 3 guys talking about wrestling. That's all this is. If we can inform you, entertain you a little bit, maybe tell you something you didn't know, give our perspectives. That's all it is. We're BSing about the good old days in pro wrestling. So it's easy to be conversational.
And Mick, I think you hit it right on the head that first and foremost, taking away our involvement, close involvement with the AWA, we're fans first.
Yeah.
I grew up watching it, and I will say that this is now my third podcast on AWA Unleashed, and sounds like that could be extended for quite a bit until I get kicked out of here. But I will.
Or you get paid, which
that too. But one thing I will not claim: I am not an authority on the AWA. I worked for the AWA from '85 to '91. I've been a fan since before I can remember. I remember my first main event was Crusher and Mad Dog in a steel cage at the old St. Paul Auditorium. I was 4 or 5 years old when that match happened. Maybe I should expand it to 4 to 6 to make sure that I at least get close to getting it right. My point is, from everything from my earliest memory up to October 7th of 1985, I was a fan, and I've got memories. And I'll say, for the large part, they're probably 95% factual, and I might miss out on the 5%. But you get the gist of it. I'm here to entertain. I'm here to share my thoughts of the AWA growing up. And during my time when I was the producer of the AWA from 85 to 91, and then again from 2000 through 2003 to the eventual sale. So I'm not an authority outside of my experiences, direct experiences behind the scenes of the AWA. I'm here to have fun. So with that, Chris, damn it, let's have some fun.
All right, let's do it. Without any further ado, Mick, I know that our guest has been waiting. I'm going to let you introduce him. I'm going to step out for a bit, and I'll be back as we get this thing kicked off. But Mick Karch, good sir, the floor is yours.
You know, you talk about how many years go by so quickly. And as we booked this guest for the show, it occurred to me that I've known the man for 50 years. I mean, 50 years, which is amazing because he and I are both 52 years old. So we have known each other basically, right out of the crib. But back in those glorious AWA days, back in the early 1970s, those 2 out of 3 fall matches on television with the jobbers / enhancement talent / carpenters of the business, the guys that would get into the ring and build up the stars. That was their job. And going back, as I said, to the early 70s, one of the greatest eras in AWA wrestling, one of those guys is a longtime friend. Let's bring him in, Mr. Bill Crouch. There he is, Bill the Bruiser, ladies and gentlemen.
Hey, stop talking. I'm reading the ticker about the pizza down at the bottom of the screen.
Wow.
You guys delivering or what?
Nothing.
Mick will.
You used to do that at the Calhoun Beach Hotel too, Bill. Before you got into the ring, order a half sausage, half pepperoni, and then you went in the ring and crapped all over the mat. So nothing's new.
Yeah, I'll get you for that.
Mick, we've been doing this podcast. He is the first one that has acknowledged the scroll. You have not acknowledged the scroll once.
Me?
I mean, it's the first. Yeah, Bill did it. Like he just his first lines were about the scroll. It's been 45. You haven't done a thing.
You know why that is?
Why?
No, because Bill is under the impression that he's going to get paid for the podcast.
Oh no, I already did. I got Bitcoins from you. And they are worth a lot, aren't they?
Yeah, they sure are, Vern. But
Wait a minute.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, now you can call me Vern.
No, not enough liver spots. But anyway, we have so much to talk about.
Yes.
And again, going back to arguably, if you look over the roster of the AWA over the years, and what a promotion it was, when you got into the business, man, you were in some good company. So we got a lot of questions for you, and I think, Chris, we're going to kick it off with you.
Yeah, I just want to ask you, Bill, just kind of starting at the genesis of it, like what was your background before getting into the business? Like what was life like for you growing up?
Well, let's see. When I was younger and watching as a fan, I started in Omaha. That's where we were. And that was back in 63, 62. And my father had passed away. So my mother decided to move up to Wisconsin to be next to her sister. So I get moved to Wisconsin. Oh, look at that. AWA is still here. Yay. So I kept watching. And I went through high school doing amateur wrestling, which Verne liked, And I just, one day decided to do something with my life besides sit around, watch Packer games, drink beer, eat potato chips with onion dip and bratwurst.
So how did you get interested in pro wrestling then? Was there something like on TV that caught your attention?
No, I think I annoyed Wally with letters and phone calls. And Bill Casisto.
Bill Casisto, God love him.
Yeah, if you remember him.
Oh, sure.
I remember both him and George Gadaski going, why do you want to get in this business? Because I do. Why does anybody want to do anything? Because they want to.
Yeah. Did you have any formal training before you entered Verne's camp? Because I know that's kind of a lot of what we want to focus on here.
Oh yeah, that was while I was going to school in Milwaukee. My future brother-in-law, was taking pictures down in South Milwaukee at one of these gyms in the Puerto Rican section of town. And we went down there and trained. It was nice because it was a boxing ring and it didn't bounce at all. So you got used to falling on your head and wondering why it hurt so much. And while my future brother-in-law, was taking pictures, we had at the gym Rod Rodriguez, if you remember him.
Absolutely, sure.
Yeah. And then you had Cesar Pabon and a bunch of the other guys that were from there. And those guys would get called by Wally to go up and do TV every now and again. Well, I worked my way into that, so I got a ride up there. I'd already been down once to, I took the Big K down to Indianapolis from Milwaukee and for a show. And that was interesting. Well, I don't know, it's been so long, but I met Bruiser and Snyder and Paul Christie and Prince Pullins and a bunch of guys.
Man, God.
And I had to borrow Pullin's shoes because I didn't have any. I would have had to wrestle barefoot. That didn't throw me with the idea, but So I met all those guys, and then like 2 weeks later, I'm going on a trip up to Minneapolis to do TV up there. And Verne had never seen me before. So Verne's looking around, he sees me. Wilbur's there. They brought him in for a house show, in TV. So I worked with Wilbur on TV in Minneapolis, just like I'd done in Indianapolis. And Verne had gone over and sort of whispered in his ear, who's this guy? Can he work? Wilbur says, yeah, he's okay. Leave him alone.
Oh, wow. Not many guys could get away with telling Verne, leave him alone.
Well, Wilbur could.
Yeah.
I imagine Bruiser could too.
Yeah.
But
did just out of curiosity, did Wilbur go over with the abdominal stretch?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, I
Yeah.
would imagine so.
That might explain why it still hurts.
Oh, yeah, yeah, among many other things.
Yeah. Well, you know, then I had a house show that night also down in Indianapolis. So what had happened with that? I was a chunky little guy at 285 pounds then. And some guy from the audience, I was working with Art Thomas, and
Say,
some guy from the audience hollers about me being fat. And I said, well, at least I wasn't stupid enough to pay $3 for ringside.
oh, that's great. I
Uh,
love it. I love
some of the things we've done, me and Jimmy Dalton and Norvell Austin and
it.
those characters we've had good times and bad times, you know. It's
Well,
like any business.
it's the business, and I want to fast forward a little bit to uh, Verne's training camp.
Yeah.
And I mentioned before we got on the air to Joe and Chris, I remember the WCCO TV up here in Minneapolis did a little about 10-minute segment on Verne's training camp, and there's Bill Crouch right in the middle of things. Verne Gagne and Billy Robinson.
Yeah.
I mean, if you could have two guys train you and groom you into the professional wrestling business, my God, could it get any better than that? Talk a little bit, not only about Verne and Billy, but about those training camp days.
Well, let's see. Let me see if I can remember who all was in it. Pershman was there. Bob Remus was there.
Yeah.
Chris Taylor, me. I think that's it.
Okay.
I'm not sure. And, you know, they started out by seeing if we could do squats forever.
There's big Chris.
There's Chris. Yeah. And then, you know, we'd learn how to do crisscrosses in the ring. And guys like Pershman could do a kip up. I couldn't. It was just like watching a large fish flop, you know. Here, grab my arm and just let me flop, you know.
Oh, my God. There he is. There's Paul early on. Eventually.
Yeah, that was back when he was 217 pounds.
Oh, yeah. Well, he maintained that weight throughout his career, you know. I mean,
oh, yeah, according to him.
Yeah, yeah. That, you talked a little bit about Verne and Billy and so on and so forth. And we have heard so many people, Bill, talk about how grueling the brutality of Verne Gagne's training camp and how dozens of guys would come out the first day. There's Billy Robinson, the late, great Billy Robinson. And then that number was whittled down real quickly, just doing the squats, etc. Take us through a typical day.
Well, it was the time afterwards spent at the Sport and Health Club sitting in the hot tub trying to recuperate. But, you know, we get out there and I forget, probably about 10 o'clock in the morning. And, you know, we'd jog on the back roads out at Verne's farm and we'd work in the ring and do squats and push-ups and crisscrosses and learn holds. And Robinson is go, here, we're going to do this one now. All right. Now, for training purposes only, we're not going to put any real, you know, strength into the holds. Every one of the damn holds, they could have hurt you badly with if they would have put the muscle behind it. Wow. See, that's what the people outside in the seats don't understand. They don't understand that all those holds are related to wrestling, jiu-jitsu, judo, not so much karate because that's mostly thrusting, but I've never taken a karate course, so what do I know? And all you had to do was put on a little more pressure in a certain place, and all of a sudden that guy that's telling you how fake it is going backwards.
Sure, of course.
So the whole thought of that was when they would do the class or the camp, that if these are people that tried to push their way into the business, Of course, Robinson and Gagne would try to, force them out. That's assuming they didn't want to keep them. Now, my group, which is Taylor, who was an Olympic Greco-Roman wrestler, and Bob Remus, I don't know what his background was before that, and Pershman, I don't know what his background was, but we all wanted to be there. We all put up with it. That's a good picture of Bob.
Yeah.
Sergeant Slaughter in his early days when he was Mickey Mouse's right-hand man.
There you go.
Oh, Mighty Mouse, not Mickey Mouse.
Mighty, yeah. Close enough.
Hey,
Yeah.
Bill, so I'm sorry to interrupt, Mick. Do you have something?
Go ahead.
I remember the piece that we're referring to. It was a More on Sunday piece, and I used it, I believe, when I did the pay-per-view special on Verne in the early 2000s. But of all of those names, I mean, now they're legendary. Slaughter and Chris Taylor and Paul Pershman / Playboy Buddy Rose. During that time when you were in camp, did you have a feeling that let me rephrase it. Who did you feel were destined for stardom from that camp? Did you know it at the time?
I never thought that far ahead.
Looking back on it now, I mean, was somebody better than somebody else in that camp if you could go retrospectively?
Well, I know one thing for sure. One part of the thing when we were out jogging on the back trails, they tell you to pick up your partner and do a fireman's carry and then, run down the trail with him on your back. Well, nobody volunteered to pick up Chris Taylor for some reason.
Yeah, I don't know what that would be, but no, very understandable.
I got Remus, and I'm carrying him across my shoulders. I'm like, God, this hurts. So,
and Chris would have been 100+ pounds more than Bob at the time.
Chris, oh gosh, I don't know what his weight was, but he was a nice guy.
Yeah.
We had a nice group of guys, and everybody found their little niche in the business, and I didn't. And in 1980, my son was born, and I quit the business because I wanted to be home and do home things instead of be on the road and never see him grow up.
Oh, we're gonna talk about that in detail. Believe me, because I mentioned to Joe and Chris before we got on the air that of the AWA guys back then, and particularly that training camp, and again we'll get to that in a second. Your tenure, not only in the AWA but in wrestling itself, was relatively short. So I definitely want to talk to you about that. I want to backtrack a little bit. So much has been written and said about Verne Gagne over the years. And, if you had a personal interaction with him at a function, at a governor's ball or something, you got one Verne Gagne. If you, happen to piss him off somewhere along the line, you got another Verne Gagne. Talk about your personal interaction with him.
It was friendly. It was helpful. He'd correct you if your holes weren't right or there was too much distance between the holds so people at ringside could see them. You know how that is. Oh, there's that pizza thing again. You have to check out the 7th Avenue Pizza. It's the highest quality, the best tasting frozen pizza. Oh, frozen pizza. Piece of cardboard with a red stain.
Now he's burying it. Now he's burying the sponsor.
Well, I don't run the show, so I'm sure I won't be called up to be on it again if I can do any more.
No,
it's a running gag, and of course it's got sliced garden hose on it.
Oh dear God. So back to Verne Gagne. Speaking of sliced garden hose.
Verne and I got along real well. I did piss off Wally one time in Duluth, but I was working with Chris Taylor, and I decided to take a chair in the ring, and Wally screaming at me in the dressing room, telling me that if Verne would have seen that, it would have fired me right away. And I said, okay, I won't do it again. And I was thinking, well, if he was going to fire me right away, who's going to drive the truck back?
Always an angle. You,
Oh yeah, there is.
you,
Always.
you,
That was one of
and all the guys. Just a couple of more questions about Verne. The guys that broke in, over a long-term basis, and I know Ric Flair had an issue with this in 1991 or 1990. He came in for a house show in St. Paul, and there was that issue of the contractual agreement with Verne Gagne to give Verne a percentage of the wrestlers' earnings as they progressed in their career. Did you have that type of arrangement with Verne? And if not, then was it basically, I just show up, I get paid, I go home and go on to the next town?
That's the way I did it. I didn't hear about a contract until I left for Charlotte.
Okay.
And then later on, the next group of guys went through, and one of them, let's see, him and his brother, Scott Irwin.
Okay. Bill Irwin and Scott Irwin.
Yeah, it was Scott who showed it to me first. I actually got to see it. I know Verne asked me about it. Would you be willing to, go under contract and pay me 10% of your earnings? I said, gee, that's going to be a lot of money for you if I'm only making $300 a week. Wow, $30.
Hey, Verne, I would have assumed Verne would have jumped at it.
He probably would have, but I said, no, not at this point. That's probably why he never sent me to Japan.
Oh, man.
Well,
Yeah.
I've always been like that, where I don't like to have a feeling that I'm being forced into something.
Right.
And that was it. That was a force thing, and I could understand why he did that. And then, if you did go in with that contract, I'm sure that I would have made a lot more money.
Gotcha.
Because then he would have made more money.
Sure.
Yeah.
And
Makes sense.
I don't know if he did that with Chris and Bob and Paul. I have no idea. It's one of those things.
I know he did it with Paul because Paul went down to Texas. And I remember getting a phone call from him saying that Verne was pissed at him because Verne wanted to remind him and placed a call to Paul down in Texas. Don't forget the 10% you owe me. And Ray Stevens, I guess, basically told Paul, you tell Verne, bullshit, you're not booking me anymore. I'm not giving you your 10%. So, and that kind of effectively kept Paul out of the AWA until about 1986 or so.
Mm.
So there you go. Chris, I know you had a question about the transition.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, there are fans that know you as Butch Malone. So when did the transformation of the change from Bill Crouch to Butch Malone happen?
I got to Charlotte working under my real name, went to Georgia to work for Barnett, and they wanted to know if I wanted to change my name. I'm thinking, oh, why? What's wrong with the one I got? Well, it's like Hollywood. You can't draw any money if your name is Sybil Kozanowski.
That's right.
Nowadays, they don't care. But back in those days of Hollywood, they did care. And everybody that had odd names,
Look at them. Look at them.
Well, you
Is
must
that
have
what they
spent
call the 1970s porn star mustache, Bill? Right there.
Hey,
I got
careful on that, Mick. I recall you having something similar in the 80s.
I've got black socks down at the bottom there.
Dear God.
Nick knows the reference.
What year would this have been, Bill?
What's that?
This photograph.
Oh, that was early 70s.
Okay.
Yeah, I was out of Minneapolis already.
You're looking kind of svelte there, buddy. You're looking, like
Svelte?
60-minute Broadway's pretty much every night.
Oh yeah. The only let me tell you a story about a 60-minute Broadway.
Absolutely.
Not so much me, but it was I was refereeing in Mitchell, South Dakota. And come to think of it, I did the same thing in Charlotte. So it was the Charlotte one. Mitchell, I had another good funny to tell.
Sure.
But Charlotte, and it's Jack Briscoe and Wahoo McDaniel. And Wahoo's wrestling for the championship, and Wahoo runs out of steam about 20 minutes in.
Oh no.
Yeah, and Jack said something about, well, his pills must have worn off.
Oh.
Well, did you ever hear that story about Wahoo shooting Dick Slater in the leg in Atlanta?
I did not. Please share that story.
They were out at a bar after the matches, and Slater was there, and Wahoo was there, and some other guys. And I just heard this, third hand. So, because Barnett had come in and said, Slater's not going to be with us for a few weeks because he got hurt. But nobody knew what hurt meant. So later on, I heard the story that there was a battle that went from the bar out to the parking lot. And I think it was this guy and Slater that were fighting. And Wahoo got into it. And Wahoo had his pistol with him. So Wahoo is going to slow this guy down by pistol whipping this guy alongside the head. So Slater was behind the guy. Wahoo hits the guy in the head with the pistol. The pistol goes off, shoots Slater in the leg. That's the way I heard it. I don't know if there's any truth to it, but it's a good story.
Bill, I don't know 1 second of that story, knowing Wahoo and, shall we say, the fun that he liked to have back in the day. Let me ask you, wrestling in those days was certainly different. Fans believed kayfabe was a part of the business, a large part of the difference. You've wrestled all over the country. Was there a difference from the northern fans to the southern fans, the way that they interacted with you during a match? And did you ever personally experience any violence? I know Bobby Heenan got shot. There was because kayfabe was alive and people believed, sort of created some issues. Did you ever experience anything like that?
Not in the northern states. Of course, I wasn't working angles that would do that. We were, underneath. So you go out and you do your thing, you get a little heat, and you'd have to really piss somebody off up north. You go down south, and if you get any interviews, you call them all rednecks, and the only good thing about this state is everybody's related. and the people down south, of course, they drink more, it seemed, than the people up north. Or maybe the people up north are used to it. I don't know. And the cold weather might, lower their intensity of emotions. I'm not sure. I don't know why. But it seemed like you were in more danger down south than you would have been up north. There was, let's see, Georgia was real good for people that got mad. We did a show where Jimmy Dalton and I we actually went over on Atlanta TV wearing the masks and went down to this place down in southern Georgia. working against Tim Woods and Johnny Walker. And Ole had told Jim, call your own finish, make it a hot one.
Oh boy.
Oh yeah, it was a hot one, all right. We had to be escorted out of town by the police department. Oh, they were mad. Oh, they were mad.
You did your job well, pal.
Yes.
Yeah, what you do is you let the baby faces have 3/4 of the match, and then right at the end you screw them. And next thing you know, you've got 87 people that have been drinking heavily and throwing stuff at the ring. It's probably like the Boston Gardens, I heard.
Oh, I'm sure.
Where they had to have a net over the top of the ring because people were throwing beer bottles into it. So the bottles would break on the fish net, and then the pieces would fall onto the ring. So anyway, there was a match that Jimmy and I had already done our part in Carrollton, Georgia, and let's see, Ole was in the main event, and Jimmy and I had already showered and changed, and we're standing out there by the dressing room door watching the matches. And this guy comes up. He's 3 seats to the wind already, and he's insulting Ole, and he's got a family member or just a friend or whatever trying to pull him away, right? Now, this little dressing room isn't much for size. It's got a stand-up walk-in shower. It's got a water heater in it, about 4 chairs folding. And this guy just keeps aggravating Ole. And Ole keeps telling him, go away, So the next thing you know, this kid decides to push his way into the dressing room. And Ole, we're blocking him. And Ole says, let him come in.
God. Oh.
I guess we hadn't taken our showers yet. We were just watching the matches because I went in there. I don't know, maybe I did take a shower earlier. And I look in the shower and I see a couple of teeth on the bottom of the shower. And of course, the guy had been thrown out by Ole. And then the cops come over and Ole says, I'm just here. And the guy pushed his way in to the dressing room, and Ole closed the door and locked it, and you hear this wham, bam, thump. And the cop comes over because that kid's friend could come over and, said what's going on. And Ole explained it to him, and we backed him up, and that we didn't tell any lies. That's exactly what happened. Yes. That kid got his bell rung and lost a couple of teeth.
Well, knowing Ole, back then and now, I'm sure Ole did it with a smile. And I don't know if Ole smiled in his entire life, but the good old days of fan violence, Who would ever thought those were the good old days? All right, we're going to do something here, Bill. I think this is going to be great because we're going to put some pictures up of your cohorts, your brethren, whoever, from back in the day, and just 1 or 2 lines, just kind of remembering a little name association.
And here all I wanted was minions.
Well, sorry, pal. Let's start with the scrap
iron. George. Bill, why do you want to be in the business? Because I want to, George. But
one of the nicest guys ever.
I swear he must have tried talking everybody out of joining the business. You want to be a jibberoni? I don't know. What is that?
There we go. Well, we're moving on. There is a young Don Morocco.
Back when he was heavier. I occasionally send messages to Don over in Hawaii. I think he's bigger than that now.
Oh, he's massive.
Yeah, I've seen some pictures. Those damn pineapples. They're injecting fat into them now.
Oh, yeah. Oh, now there's a guy.
Bobby
Wayne Heenan.
Oh, he could tell some funny stories. He was telling me one time that he was out along ringside. I think he was managing the Blackjacks at the time. And this guy comes up and he starts insulting Bobby, and Bobby's basically blowing him off. So the guy and Bobby both throw a punch at the same time, and they hit each other's fists with the punch.
Oh dear.
So the next thing that happens, this is Bobby telling the story, so it could have been embellished a bit. So then Bobby said, we both tried to kick each other at the same time and ended up kicking each other in the shins. And finally, the police grabbed him and pulled him away. But most of the time, I didn't get to hear those because I was never, on the same circuit as they were.
Gotcha.
But Bobby was a funny guy.
There's another guy right there.
Yep.
By way of Albuquerque, by way of Laredo, by way of Minneapolis, Blackjack Lanza.
He never went to Bug Tussle, Oklahoma, huh?
I don't believe so. He might have done a flyover.
I don't really fault him for not going there. I've been there. I spent a week there one day.
Boom, ladies and gentlemen, he'll be here all week. Nick Bockwinkel and Ray Stevens, in my estimation, Bill, the greatest tag team of all time, outside of when you were in the business, of course, when you were teaming with guys. But talk a little bit about Nick and Ray.
Well, Nick and Ray would help you with anything, as long as you were one of the wrestlers. If you were one of the crowd, no.
Sure. Yeah.
And the fun thing about watching Nick was everybody else that did interviews would scream and holler and stand on their tippy toes when they're trying to make a point and, point at the camera. Nick never did that. He was very low-keyed, eloquent, and insulted the people above their mentality, it seemed. And I miss the guy dearly. I haven't, I haven't seen him or Ray, and I know Ray died, at home because I heard the story.
Yeah.
And let's see.
There's a there's a couple of guys. The Texas Outlaws, Dick Murdoch and Dusty Rhodes.
And Dusty is what Ric Flair wanted to be. That's basically what he ended up is. He's just thinner. But yeah, those two are fun to work with too.
They closed down a couple of bars in Minneapolis and St. Paul early. Early. Closing time I believe it was 1:00 back in the day. They shut them down about 9 p.m. There's the guy you were talking about, Wahoo McDaniel. Precursor to Dick Cheney, firing at pretty much anything that moved. Wahoo, what a legitimate tough guy, but what a superstar.
I never looked at Wahoo as a tough guy because I never had to get him mad. I was refereeing a match between. No, it wasn't him. It was. We're talking about Wahoo, but I never saw him mad.
Wow.
He might have been in the ring a couple of times, but you couldn't tell it even when you're refereeing. But you could feel the chops. It was like working with Valentine. Johnny Valentine was the stiffest guy I almost worked with. I did work with him, but he wasn't the stiffest. Neither was he. He just didn't know his own strength.
How many times did you work Andre?
I think I had him once on TV.
That was it?
Yeah, Verne didn't spend any time trying to kill me off with his tough guys,
That's good. But Andre was light with you, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Well,
in fact, I had a '68 Camaro in North Carolina at the time, and I brought it down from Minneapolis when we moved. And believe it or not, I took Andre to a shot in that car. Now ask me how I managed that.
Tell us.
Let me guess. You had to take the front seat out, and he could sit in the back seat.
That's right.
Oh my.
But he had leg room then.
Well, so did Fred Flintstone. You know, when he took the bottom out there too. But that's one more. Let's take a look at this guy here. Did you ever have the opportunity to
working with the dog?
Maurice?
No, I don't remember working with him.
Okay. Well, you're probably better off.
Can I ask one guy, Bill? I like to compare him to the Stan Laurel to Oliver Hardy, and Verne would have been Oliver Hardy, and Mr. Wally Carbo would have been Stan Laurel. And I say that because from what I knew, the boys would always go to Wally because it could get through where Verne was, well, Verne. But give me your impressions and your interactions with Mr. Wally Carbo.
Aside from that one night I pissed him off bringing a chair in the ring.
Yeah.
He very, very nice, very businesslike. I wonder if he ever found out that Jeff Ports in Denver forged his signature on a check.
Oh.
We were at the motel.
Oh.
And we were drinking, after the show, and Wally was there. Left his checkbook. So Jeff Ports grabbed it and
there he is.
The beer, that we were drinking.
Oh man!
And it looked like a good facsimile of Wally's signature.
Oh boy! Wow. Well, Wally had a reputation. Well, I want to say he was a ladies' man, but I heard that any old port in a storm, and I heard that Wally made the rounds. God bless him.
The Uncle Milty of the AWA.
Yes, he was. But I know you didn't know about that, Bill, because pretty much at the end of a show, you would grab your milk and cookies and go back to the Marriott.
And go back home. If
All
I
right.
was in town, I went back home.
Bill, we're gonna have to take it home here, ring the bell, as they say. But I got a question for you, my friend. So many times we look at the roster of the AWA, the guys that are not here anymore, and it's really sobering. I would say that probably 90% of the roster from the 1970s is no longer here. You were a part of one of the, as I said at the outset, one of the greatest eras in AWA history. You got Cauliflower Alley Club, you got the Hall of Fame in Waterloo. Haven't seen you there. What do you have any inclination to go, or is the business is back then and that's it?
Well, I did go up to a couple of them in Seattle with Dean Silverstone.
Okay.
And only because that was close. I didn't join Cauliflower Alley Club because they wanted money, and they wanted me to send it to some place that I wasn't. Back in those days, you didn't send money to people that you didn't know.
Okay.
And, we weren't into plastic big time like we are now.
Sure.
So I never joined the Cauliflower Alley Club. And I've never been to any of the reunions. I know some people have asked me, well, first of all, I get questions about signed autograph pictures and going to the reunions and doing this other stuff. And I said, that's in the past. I don't have any pictures to autograph, and, but I'll pay you for them. I said, I don't care. That's back in the old days. Come on. I wasn't a star except in Tennessee. So,
that's really interesting because a lot of the guys, let's say they overstayed their welcome, or, they think that they can charge $2,500 or $3,000 for an appearance, when they, worked 30, 35 years ago. But I got to tell you, my friend, this has been just great. And I wish I could have found it. I found a picture of you and I maybe a month ago, misplaced it. We're at the Calhoun Beach Hotel, and I've got you're selling for me, well, sort of, in a top wrist lock out in the lobby of the Calhoun Beach Hotel. And I don't know, you had a jean shirt on or something like that, but you're wearing your glasses. You had the short cropped hair, a little bit of a mustache, and you're putting me over in the lobby of the Calhoun Beach Hotel. And that was the last time I was put over ever in life. So I want to thank you for that, bud.
Oh, remember the times we used to sit in the audience at the TV station? That's how we met.
That is correct.
We were sitting next to each other. I was wearing a Western hat. I came up with the guys from Milwaukee. Not to wrestle, just to be there.
I know.
You and I ended up sitting together. You were trying to figure out if I was going to run in the ring or something. And
oh, the good old days, man. I'm so glad that we got a chance to do this, and reconnect. Hopefully we can do it 50 years down the road.
Don't think that's going to happen.
All right. Well,
I think 50 years now is pretty good.
I would absolutely agree with that. And, Bill, you're an old school guy. I've got nothing but respect for you. We all feel the same way. You made the guys look good. Some of the guys that you made look a lot better than they really were. And I think carpenter in the business is a real good explanation.
I just carry ants that like to eat wood. Carpenter ants. They sing too.
Oh, dear God. We always go about a minute too long, Chris, don't we?
What? I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, I got you. Bill, love you, buddy. We'll see you on Facebook.
Live long and prosper.
Take care.
All right.
See you later.
All right. Oh man, that was fun. That was fun. You don't get those perspectives so often, and when you do get somebody like Bill who can tell those stories, I feel like this is where we really have to take advantage of it. So I don't know, like those opportunities like that, guys. I feel like you said, Vic, they're kind of few and far between at this point.
They really are. I mean, first of all, again, the sad fact is that not a lot of the guys are left. Beyond that, a guy like Bill Crouch or, recently Tom Rocky Stone, those guys were a big part of what the wrestling business was back in the 70s. The modern day wrestling fans don't understand it. And that's not a knock on them. It's the way the product is. Everything has to be a main event. Mm-hmm. Back in the day, it was something totally different, and my utmost respect to guys like Bill Crouch, plus the fact that what you see is what you get with Bill. He's just a regular guy. He never took it too seriously. He knew what his role was, and God love him. Great to see him.
Yeah, I think that's great. Go ahead, Joe.
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, they were an integral part. I think the case could be made for back in those days that a wrestling fan would see them on TV more than their favorite star.
Yeah,
of course, they were getting the snot kicked out of them every week because it was a squash match, but they were the ones to get the talent over, to get the names over. In the case you're talking about Andre, not surprised that he only wrestled Andre once on TV. Andre didn't need to be put over. It was a treat, a real treat if Andre wrestled on TV. It was always paying the Mazzotti to go and watch him live. He was Andre.
And people like that, because they work with so many different individuals, you've got stories. Whereas, if you're not featured as much, you don't have as much exposure. And I think that's where the stories, you might kind of overlook them at the point, but now you get to this point where you really want to hear the stories. That's where some of the good stuff is really unearthed.
I want to mention something else about Bill Crouch. Bill was of the George Gadasky ilk because he did everything. He wrestled, he refereed, he took the ring back and forth, set up the ring, tore down the ring. He did everything. And, as Bill kind of alluded to, didn't make a lot of money in the business. That's why Verne didn't get his big percentage. But Bill, honest to God, he busted his ass for the relatively short time he was in the business. And hats off to Bill Crouch. Great guy.
If I had a hat, I would join you there, Mike.
There we go. Let's go ahead and bring it home with some shout outs. I think, Joe, you have not had a chance to do this, so we're going to let you go first, and then we'll thank our sponsors, and then we'll bring it home.
Sounds good. My first shout out, I have to stick within my involvement in professional wrestling, and that's on the production side. I was mentored by Mike Shields, who hired me, Al DeRusha to a lesser extent, but nonetheless, Al DeRusha. And so I took it on myself to help the next generation. And my shout out goes to the MAW producer and all around production guy, Chavo. The kid loves video production. He dedicates a ton of time, and I'm talking dedicates time that he doesn't get paid for, to hone his craft. He is dedicated to video production of MAW. And Chavo, fantastic job. Keep it up. The next generation is in good hands, young man.
Got to give a shout out to a young lady who pretty much stole the show at the AWA reunion. I think we had to hold her back to keep her from dancing on stage. I'm talking about Lori Benkowski-Smith, the daughter of Sodbuster Kenny J and his wife Diane. I love Lori. She is so great. What a loyal and dedicated listener of the podcast. So, Lori, we'll see you on Facebook here.
And I'm going to give mine to Reggie Harp. Always, a great guy. I think he's in South Carolina right now, but also on Twitter at Reggie Harp. So, Reggie, this is for you, my friend. And that being said, let's go ahead and thank our sponsors. First of all, you see Soda Stick. I've got the hat. Mick, you've got some stuff as well. We've got hoodies, personalized hoodies. If you want, go to sodastickco.com. You get 15% off with the code UNLEASH. They just had a Black Friday deal. I believe it ended last night. You didn't need a code. You can go ahead and try. We got the black and white T-shirts. Great stuff for Christmas and holidays. Be sure to check that out. And even though Bill didn't like it, I love 7th Avenue Pizza. They've got a brand new breakfast pizza that is the fucking bomb.com.
Have you had it?
I've had it, yes.
Okay.
I've had it. It's pretty good.
Why am I asking you if you tried the pizza? My God, that's like asking Haystack Calhoun, did you try the hors d'oeuvres?
Hey, Body by Pizza, baby. Body by 7th Avenue Pizza. You want pizza for breakfast? They came up with it. A breakfast pizza, the 7 a.m. breakfast pizza from 7th Avenue Pizza. Going to put their logo on there. Check it out all around the Twin Cities. That being said, guys, this has been a lot of fun. Follow us on all of our platforms. YouTube is where you get probably the most bang for your buck because you get to look at all the pictures, and we try and make all these visuals to kind of take you back in time. Because what do I have something on my lip there, Mick, or were you just?
I had an itch. Do you mind? Just keep talking.
Oh, I thought that was like some sort of subliminal thing. Kind of like when you have a booger or something.
Well,
people,
do stuff like that, though.
Yeah. Oh, I got rid of Joe. Oh, there's Joe. All right.
Oh,
hey,
what?
he's still doing it.
Before we take it home, I have a word of advice for everybody out there, all the single guys. This was a message left on my answering machine by Wally Carbo, probably about 40 years ago. Came home from work, turned on the answering machine, and there's some guy is saying, "When are you going to get away from the business altogether and find yourself a rich gal and get married?" So I don't think that there is any more sage advice. Do you, Chris?